titillating. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be officially starting into my Star Wars Canon project. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, have you read any Star Wars books? Are you interested in reading any Star Wars books? Did I make you want to read some Star Wars books with this video? Let's talk about it. Alright, so this is an idea I have been throwing around for quite some time, which is essentially to dive into the Star Wars novels. I love Star Wars, I really do. I definitely think my love of Star Wars has grown over the last few years with the introduction of some of the new TV shows. Cough, cough, thank you, Pedro, Pascal.
This is the way.
But I will say, I have in fact watched more than just The Mandalorian now. And after falling in love with some of the expanded universe outside of the original movies, I realized there's a lot more content out there between the books and the comics and manga. There's a lot. And these books have been coming out for decades. One way or another, this is a very big project to take on, and it is going to take me quite a long time. It is adding so many books to my TBR. I decided to make it a little bit more manageable for myself, that I was going to stick purely to the books that are currently considered canon. Legends is everything that came out prior to 2014 for the most part, and doesn't solely focus on the Jedi versus the Sith. Whereas from the research I've done, apparently canon is conflicts that relay back to the Jedi versus the Sith. Like I said, this is a really long list. You know, there's a question of where the heck should I start? And my type 1 self was like, we're gonna go in timeline order. Chronologically, baby. There's a lot of debate as to what is the proper timeline order. I personally am going off of the list at Yoda's datapad. I'll put a link to that in the description down below if you're intrigued. I do actually really like that one because all of the books are linked, and it does have a breakdown between Legends and canon on one page. And then it gives you a estimated time of when that book is set. Personally, I just don't really ever vibe with middle grade. It just reads a little too young for me 9 times out of 10. So I do believe I'm only going to be focusing on adult and YA. I'm also probably not gonna read the short stories, just because short stories, as far as a medium goes, we don't work together. No, I just don't have a great track record there. With that really long introduction out of the way, let's talk about the first 4 books I am going to be reading for this reading vlog. I am going to be coming out with one of these vlogs every 2 months, and I am trying my best to read about 2 books a month. I might bump it up to 3. So starting at the top, we have Star Wars The High Republic Convergence by Zoraida Cordova, and this one is following Jedi Knight Gala Nattai, who ends up in the middle of a ongoing war between these 2 orbiting planets, Irem and Arano. The 2 youngest heirs from these planets decide to try for a peace treaty that is kicked off by them getting married. However, before that can happen, there is an assassination attempt on both of them. Gela ends up volunteering to try and find the person responsible for this, and also, you know, help to protect these 2 heirs. She ends up working with a chancellor from Coruscant's son, Axel, who has a very strong dislike and distrust of the Jedi. Honestly, I'm really excited for this one because it kind of sounds like Winter's Orbit, but set in the sci-fi world with a larger cast. I mean, arranged marriage, sci-fi world, mystery, I'm all over it. And I do know from prior work that I do like Zoraida Cordova's writing style. However, I imagine this is probably going to be far less flowery than Orquídea Divina was. Next up is a YA novel, and that one is The High Republic's Path of Deceit by Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton. This one is actually following a Padawan, mostly Kevmo, who along with his master travels to Dalna searching for a lost artifact that is supposed to be very closely tied to the Force. While there, they end up interacting with this group called the Path of the Open Hand that is sort of like a cult. They believe that the Force is almost like its own entity, its own being, and has its own wills. So for the Jedi to bend it to their own will is sacrilegious. So of course, they're not big fans of the Jedi. It does look like we're going to actually follow 2 members of this path, so I am really interested to see how that works. A cult, but Star Wars world, and I'm very excited for that. The only one I don't have a physical copy of currently is The Battle of Jedha by George Mann, and this one is following a bunch of different Jedi, I assume, but I know it is taking place on Jedha, which is a planet that is supposed to be a bit of a holy site for the Jedi, along with multiple other religions within this universe who all worship the Force. I remember correctly, I think Jedha is also the place where the Jedi would go to try and harness their kyber crystals from like one of the caves, and that, you know, was a pilgrimage almost for them to create their own lightsaber then from that. I'm honestly not going to read into too many specifics about this one because, I mean, with the title of Battle, I assume that the events happening here are going to be kicked off in one of these prior books, and I don't want to spoil anything. And it kind of looks like it's going to be the same situation here with Cataclysm by Lydia Kang, because I do see that we are once again going to be following Jedi Knight Galanatai as well as the Chancellor's son Axel Greylark. I also did notice that it has the same 2 planets listed in Convergence, so perhaps this one is kind of like a more direct sequel to Convergence. You know, timeline wise, it doesn't happen exactly after that one. There's 2 in between. All right, so those are going to be the 4 books that I'm planning to start into the Star Wars universe with. I am both very excited and very nervous. I have not read a ton of sci-fi, but what I have been picking up lately, I've really been enjoying. That on top of the fact that it's set in the Star Wars world, which I'm already pretty familiar with, will work out well and make things go in my favor. I'm very excited for this, but again, I'm a little nervous that I'm gonna get really lost. But on that note, I will officially talk to you guys again whenever I have started into Convergence. Hey y'all, so I officially hit the halfway point into Convergence. First update for this video, for this project, I'm so excited. Also, if I sound a little weird, it's because I'm currently sick. So I am going to be taking more water breaks than normal. Pretty quickly, you can tell this is going to be a very political-based story, as we are seeing from people on both of these worlds. Now we are seeing also the Jedi getting involved because they're trying to aid in the relief for the people being impacted by this war. However, they are supposed to remain impartial. They cannot get involved in the war itself unless one side specifically asks for help, and even then, I don't think they're allowed to provide in like the fighting. One planet is mostly covered by ocean, and the other planet is desert terrain. I did notice though that the synopsis on Goodreads gives away like the first 50% of this book's plot. When you're reading it, there's a lot more excitement. There are some action sequences, questions on to what's actually happening. Is somebody getting more involved than they say they are? The basics of the plot totally given away by that synopsis. I was also shocked by the number of characters we're following. Cordova bounces around between many characters, both sides, as well as the impartial Jedi, and then some politicians from Coruscant for the Republic that are also trying to get involved. The politicians are hoping that if they can garner peace between these 2 planets, then they might be able to convince these planets to join the Republic. And with there being such a large cast, it is kind of hard to get invested in all of these characters, but I will say the ones I am most interested in are definitely the 2 children of the monarchs, probably the most level-headed ones, trying their best to bring about peace. Fontu is from the planet that is mostly oceans, and Ziri is from the planet that is a rocky terrain. I don't know how to pronounce either of the planets' names, so I'm not going to continuously butcher those throughout this entire clip. Fontu and Ziri are in my favorite sort of situation for characters from opposing sides, where they are then forced to rely on one another to get their end in goal. Ziri is also a captain in the military for her planet, and unfortunately she crash lands a ship. That's the word. Why could I not think of ship? Ziri's ship crash lands on Fontu's planet, and he actually ends up saving her life. But of course, because she has been raised to hate these people, from that situation, their relationship automatically becomes so interesting. Neither of them is what the other expects. And while they don't want to betray their people, at the same time, they realize that they're not so different. Again, I like that they're on opposing sides, but in this situation, they are forced to rely on one another to try and finally bring peace to both of their planets. I just love how that's being handled. Already by this point, so much trust has developed between them, but there's still so much uncertainty, so many questions going on. I love it. I love it. I also will say for other characters, Cordova handles them in a very cinematic way, which is really clever on her part, especially seeing as how, you know, this is like taking Star Wars, which started as a visual medium, and putting it into a book format. Then the audiobook itself also just adds to this because it is a full production. There are background sounds, you can hear music. If somebody is speaking over a comm unit, there will be like interference between the narrator and the microphone itself. Across the board, like, I really am enjoying the audiobook. And then of course, you know, the cover has our female Jedi Knight, which is Gala. And I will say, I do like her because she is one of those characters that is very true to her morals, which makes perfect sense for a Jedi. But I also really like seeing the struggle she is having in remaining impartial. She has such a difficult time sitting back when she knows she could be helping these people. Then on the opposite side, we end up meeting Axel Greylark, who is the son of one of the politicians from the Republic. He is really only doing this so he can get on his mom's good side and he can finally get his inheritance. It's completely the antithesis to Gala, and so I love seeing their interactions so far. There hasn't been a lot of them, but I'm really excited for more. I'm not 100% sure, but he has something against the Jedi. Make their interactions all the more tension-filled and all the more entertaining. If it weren't for the fact that the synopsis on Goodreads kind of ruins a lot of the plot, I'd say that I was having a phenomenal time. Because I really am. I am really enjoying this book. Anytime I'm listening to the audio, I don't want to stop. I want to keep going. The action scenes have been really well done, very fast-paced, keep you on the edge of your seat. But again, the political intrigue is really what's holding my attention here, and I'm loving it. Hey y'all, so I officially finished out my first Star Wars book, Convergence, and I actually really enjoyed it. I don't know why I say actually as though I thought I wouldn't. Once again, I do want to mention the fact that it's kind of strange. The Goodreads synopsis totally ruins like the first half of the book, but the latter half is a roller coaster ride. It was so much fun. There were lots of twists and turns that I was not anticipating, one of which I am still just jaw on the floor over. Did not see that coming. The only real negative I have in regard to the writing is, I will say, the pacing is so wonky. I really would have thought multiple different times we were gearing up for the climax. We were right at the precipice, and then I would look down and I still had 4 hours left in the audiobook, 2 hours left in the audiobook. It was so shocking to me every single time it happened, so I guess things were a bit jumpy. So I think you can tell as far as the characters went, I did get a lot more invested into them. I do still think there could have been some more growth showcased in at least Fontu and 𝗖cie. I liked the development of their relationship, but I would have wanted more, but I also know technically this isn't really a sci-fi romance book. That was just like a bonus that I got. The relationship that develops though between Gela and Axel was also super interesting. Gela is very true to her morals. She really believes in everything the Jedi stand for, but she's trying to find a place for herself as a Jedi that makes sense for her, that gives her purpose, that she really feels driven by. In comparison to Axel, who is really a party boy, is basically just constantly trying to numb himself to this pain he has from a traumatic background. Like I loved seeing those two interact, and the way Axel would snipe at Gela, but she wouldn't really let it bug her, and then the way she could just so easily read him to filth. And because of their interactions, you actually see both of them experience some growth that felt really natural and very well handled. Another thing that I would have loved to see a little bit more on, I do think we're gonna see possibly a little bit more of both these characters in future installments. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm really hopeful for it. Axel in particular, I would love to see more of his story continuing on, especially with where we leave him at the end of this book. My compile breakdown came out to 4 stars for this one. I had a great time reading it. I have already seen that apparently this one's a little bit divisive, probably because of the romance elements, I'm guessing. Although I had those few little nitpicky things, really liked this. Off to a very strong start with this one. Hey guys, so I have officially started into Path of Deceit, our next book for the Star Wars project. I'm actually like 60% in because I got really sucked in and I forgot that, oh yeah, this one isn't as long as Convergence was. So I got really sucked in and then finally stopped and realized, oh, whoops, I'm a lot further in than I anticipated. Anyway, this book is expanding on the Path of the Open Hand, which was very lightly introduced in Convergence. I have to say the authors were really clever in how they've handled that group. They are allowing for this competing view of the Force, something that obviously is very well known in this universe, but also is like very well known in pop culture in general. The authors were really smart in utilizing a viewpoint of a character who is so ingrained in the Open Hand, who really believes in all of their ideas and messages, which essentially boils down to the fact that the Force is something to be freed. They don't think it should be utilized by any one individual. Think that the Force is sort of like a give and take situation. If somebody utilizes it here, they don't know what that will take away from the Force in a different scenario, in a different place, at a different time. Every interaction we have between that zealot Marta and then our Padawan that we're following, Kev, is so interesting because they both believe so deeply in the Force and everything it stands for, but they believe in it in very different ways. And I also will say, for the most part, they're pretty respectful of each other and what the other person thinks. At least Kev definitely is. Marta is a little bit more fearful of how Kev utilizes the Force because she doesn't agree with what the Jedi do. I think the authors have done a really great job in looking at this element of the Star Wars universe in a different way, in a way that like I've never considered before, but I'm loving it. We also see through the eyes of other people involved in this cult, and that allows us as the audience to understand that it's not as innocent as it seems. Definitely tangentially tying back into the plot from Convergence, making me think that it'll probably end up stretching into a good few books within this High Republic series. I think the High Republic kind of all can work together as a series, but I'm also not really sure. Haven't done a lot of research into that, so we'll see. But I am very intrigued to see that all unfold. Definitely does earn its YA age rating in the main characters we mostly follow, with Kev, our Padawan, Marta, the religious zealot, and then her cousin, oh shoot, what's her cousin's name? Yana. First off, all three of those characters are teenagers in themselves, and the writing around them all sound like teenagers. But at the same time, I will admit, there are some like darker elements going on in the story that are being hit on, and I'm impressed. I'm really digging it still. Kev is a flirt, and he even thinks about himself that he needs to work more on trying to limit his connections that he makes with people because it is threatening to his identity as a Jedi. I will say I'm actually really liking that. I was getting a little nervous when Marta was sort of returning some of his affection because I didn't want another tragic forbidden romance between a Jedi and a non-Jedi. But I actually think the authors are handling that in a really clever way because Kev is acknowledging this and realizes this is a problem, and he doesn't want it to become more. He knows this is an issue that he needs to work on. I think it allows for some exploration of that aspect of being a Jedi and how Kev can still make connections with people but not form these real strong attachments. Since he's a Padawan, he is still learning to set those boundaries, and it's also interesting seeing him kind of talking through this with his master. I also really like their relationship because she's a lot more aloof and kind of cold and really distant seeming, but he knows her very well, so he can like read the tiny little cues of her face, and you can tell that because of that they do have a pretty strong connection as master and Padawan, and it makes sense that they were paired together. So yeah, I'm really liking this. Again, it's acknowledging stuff that I haven't thought about previously in other Star Wars media I've consumed. So I'm really, really enjoying the ride, and I can't wait to see more of it. I only have like 3 hours left in the audio. Hey y'all, so I officially finished up Path of Deceit. I was correct, it took me no time at all to finish this book, and wow. I have to say, I am very impressed with these authors because though this is a YA book, and I will reinforce the fact that yes, you can feel that in the voice for the two main characters that we follow the most, Kev and Marta, these authors go there. Holy shit, was not anticipating for them to really take that leap, going as dark as they did. It caught me off guard, but I actually really like that they did that. It kind of showcases to us that this is going to be pretty serious, pretty high stakes, especially with the next book being called The Battle of Jedha. I think you can imagine where things are gonna go, but it is gonna be a wild time. Probably enjoyed seeing a little bit more of Kev's relationship with 𝗖cie, his master, but across the board, this was really good. The last 40% of this was a wild ride. It definitely took some twists I was not anticipating. I am so excited to continue on with this series. It was crazy. 4.5 stars on my cop pile. Like I said, I had those few little nitpicky things, but for the most part, really, really liked this one. Read it as a series if you can. Hey guys, so I've hit the halfway point into the Battle of Jedha, and I had to update y'all because things are getting good. I'm getting really intrigued. Like the final little bit where I stopped this, titillating. I was a little nervous going into it because the page count for this book is like 512 pages. The audiobook is not even 6 hours long. Turns out this is actually more of a audio drama. I mean, it is full cast
It has all of the background noise. It's not read like a novel would be. There isn't any exposition. It is all dialogue. You can hear things in the background, and obviously like the characters will explain the things that you're hearing, or like little bits to add to the atmosphere and the world and the plot. But really it's just dialogue alone. And I do have to say it's very well done. The guy who voices Master Creighton's son, one of the Jedi we were following in this one, is not the same voice actor from Clone Wars for Obi-Wan Kenobi, but damn does he sound like it. And I love that. Thus far, while you definitely could listen to this as a standalone, honestly, I think having the background knowledge about the Path of the Open Hand and the war, as well as the treaty that they're trying to sign, does make it more immersive, and I can follow what's happening in the story a lot easier, even though having that background isn't necessarily needed. I am a little bummed that we're not seeing the monarchs from those two planets, and I had gotten very invested in their relationship. But with that said, I do think it's interesting that we are seeing more of Marta, who is one of the main characters from Path of Deceit in this, and she is on Jedha continuing to preach to these people. We are seeing how the Jedi and the Path of the Hand are interacting, and how the turbulence between those two is making things a little bit more complicated when it comes to the signing of this peace treaty. This actually does one of those things where it starts out in the middle of the conflict, and then it's 72 hours prior to that, and we slowly are moving forward as the book progresses. With the way the story is set up, it's very hard to get really attached to any of the characters. I like Creighton, but I also have a basis to like him. Fascinated by Marta's character, but again, I have a basis for that. So really, the thing that's keeping me most engaged in this book is the plot and my intrigue to see how we get to the start of this book, the battle that is going to break out. So for right now, I am liking this, but unfortunately I'm not really loving it as much as I did the last two books in the series.
Hey y'all, so I officially finished out the Battle of Jedha. I do have to say, first and foremost, please read this as an audiobook. I mean, it's an audio drama, so like if you're not, you're really missing out. It is fantastically produced. It was really well done. I applaud all of the voice actors and just across the board. I really enjoyed this for what it was. I do think this furthered the storyline between Arano and I don't know why I can never remember the other planet's name. But on top of the conflict between those two, I also really loved seeing more about the Path of the Open Hand, and particularly some of the more nefarious elements behind that group. Oh, just like really, really loved seeing that. And the way they respond to the Jedi, there was an interaction between the head of the cult and one of the Jedi we follow in this, and I really, really enjoyed that. As I said, with there being very little exposition, it's also pretty difficult to get attached to any of the characters because you only are seeing their personality through dialogue, which, you know, you can bond with a character that way, but I find in books it's a little bit harder. Most of the characters that I felt attachment to, we had actually met in the prior books that I've talked about in this video. When doing my Cawpile breakdown, characters was definitely on the lower side. The main one we were following the most, I want to say Selena, but I don't think that's right. I liked her, but really my go-to thought throughout all of her scenes was I just want more from her. I want more of her personality. I want more of her background. I really want to understand her as a character, and I think that would have made me enjoy her more. Finally, I feel like this wrapped up really fast. It's weird to say that because the final conflict that we're counting down to from the beginning, it lasts a fair amount of time, but then you bounce back and forth between all of the different characters' perspectives and seeing the different events that are all taking place. But when it comes to a conclusion in this book, I don't know, like the finale wasn't really satisfying to me. I don't feel like we got answers that really close everything out on a good note. I did think that there were some really fantastic lines when it came to like beliefs and religion, as well as war and the impact of it. I thought the writing in those specific themes was all very well done. It's so weird because it's like I liked this as an audio drama, but I also had issues with it when it comes to like storytelling. A lot of those issues come down to the fact that it is an audio drama. I don't know, this is my first time reading one of these, so it was really wonky when checking out my Cawpile breakdown. Technically it came out to 3.5 stars, and so that's what I'm gonna rate this as. Not a favorite, however, I do still recommend it. It was a great book to bridge the gap between some of the stories and also to continue the overarching plot in this arc of the series.
Hey guys, so I've hit the halfway point into Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. First off, I just want to say I'm over the moon that I get to see more of these characters that we were introduced to in Convergence. I feel like you could still follow along going off of Convergence and then just jumping into this one, but I do believe I have a lot more appreciation for the plot as well as all the politics that are interplaying within it by reading the 2 previous books. It also means I have a lot more understanding as to what the Path of the Open Hand actually is and how big of a threat they really could be. I have become so enamored with this plot though. The Jedi trying to neutralize the Path of the Open Hand while also trying to finally bring about the end of this forever war between Irem and Arano. My intrigue when I'm reading this is constantly through the roof. Whether I am reading it physically or listening to the audiobook, I just do not want to stop. I want to keep going. I especially like that around the plot of the Open Hand in this one, it's starting to feel more like a mystery where our Jedi are investigating what this path is doing, what it is they want, what is their end goal, and then why do they keep popping up around the Forever War. That alone has the stakes fairly high, but with the understanding that comes from having read Path of Deceit and seeing results of Jedi trying to investigate this already, it just raises the stakes even more. Yet on the opposite side, when it comes to the Forever War and the politics there, things are just as dire. Because of the events from the Battle of Jedha, everything going on here is really politics-based and is about our characters trying to maneuver once more for a peace agreement. So much history between them that it's very difficult for people on these planets to set that all aside. And then again, the path is certainly not helping matters. Characters in this one, we bounce around between many different characters, and a lot of them we have met previously. So like I was saying at the beginning, I'm loving getting to revisit them. But when it comes to a few of the new characters we've met, in particular, I'm very interested in Benoit, but I want more from him. He is a member of the Path of the Open Hand. I want to understand why he has such a loyalty to them. There was a little nod to something when it came to the discussion around the Force with him, but I want more of it. I want that to be expanded upon. There's also a certain character that pops up in here, which I was not anticipating, and she is somebody that we know from a previous TV show that I'm not going to mention, and we get to see her interacting with this child, and I really love their interactions because there are such tumultuous emotions going on with trying to take care of this kid who constantly keeps putting themselves into danger, but at the same time, like, being so protective of them. It's very sweet. As for characters we are revisiting, obviously we have Axel in the front, and I love seeing the interactions between him and Gela. At the same time, those interactions make me want to shake both of them for very different reasons. We also have Ziri and Fontu, the younger monarchs from Irem and Arano, who were married in the previous book. I really like those two and their interactions as well. They're trying their best to navigate their relationship while also everything about their relationship being so normal because of the circumstances surrounding it. Something I've always loved about Star Wars is the ability to see these little moments in relationships with the characters that you meet. That's something I'm definitely continuing to enjoy in the series because at the forefront of the story is plot. It is battles and politics. There's just such great opportunity for tiny moments that these characters manage to steal, and I love it. I love those. I also love Gela's Jedi partner, Orin. Might be because the narrator makes him sound like the dad from Brave, if I'm being honest, and he is described as like having this big bushy beard and like just being a bear of a man. I adore him though, because he is filled with all of these terrible jokes. Then the one other relationship that's kind of new for us to see this in depth is that between Axel and his mother, Kyung. She is a chancellor. And so it's very interesting to see how fraught their relationship is, but also how thinking about it elicits such emotions between the two of them. Axel is very filled with anger and bitterness towards his mother, while on the opposite side, Kyung is stuck between a rock and a hard place. She wants to do everything she can to take care of her son, but at the same time, he has spent years rebelling, and now at this point, the stakes are too high. He is getting into way too serious and dangerous things for her to continue trying to protect him. So anytime she is thinking about their relationship, there's just so much emotional turmoil in the writing. I'm impressed with Kang's writing in that. And I also want to say, when it comes to the writing, I'm impressed that for most of the characters, their voices seem pretty true to the voice introduced in Convergence. So applaud to her there. Pacing is a little wonky because we alternate between so many different characters, and there's also almost like two different plots that are intertwined, but like at this point they're still fairly separate. I'm continuing to have a fantastic time with this, and I cannot wait to continue reading. Literally the reason I am filming this right now is because I want to go take Faith on and listen to the audiobook.
Hey y'all, so I have officially finished out Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. I do remember from my last update that one of the few issues I was having was that I wanted a little bit more about Binot. He was the path member that we were actually following here. And thankfully that was fulfilled in the latter half of this. We started to see a little bit of his background and some more exploration of his identity and how the influence of this path of the open hand has led him to have the beliefs he has, but also his ability to twist their ideologies to fit his own beliefs, which I felt like was really clever and also played on real world religions pretty well. Though I will say he is used in a few surprise twists in the plot, and I wasn't really shocked in any of those. I don't think Kang really wrote it in the best way to make it very shocking. In other character news, I also really liked seeing more of that relationship between the unnamed Jedi and the youngling. That was just very cute, very pure. I did love the Jedi's perspective where they are getting so tired of having to take care of this kid who is constantly pushing their boundaries and also, you know, has force abilities so they can get themselves into trouble very easily. But at the same time, they're so protective of them. And how freaking cute it was that the kid was so desperate and knew they were going to help in the situations that were taking place. They just knew, so they went in all guns blazing. Once again, I just really liked the dynamic between those two, even though I'm not telling you what character it was. I also really liked what ended up happening with Axel and his mother Kyung's relationship. I did not see that coming. The way they finally started to understand each other and be more empathetic towards the other's position was so well nuanced. There were some bits that were happening there that were very shocking. Towards the end of the book, there was like the opportunity for a big something to happen, and it didn't. And that kind of leads into my next complaint, which is that it felt like some very serious things were going on in the climax here. Like some really dire circumstances could have resulted, and Kang didn't take the jump. She actually pulled away from it. And I was a little disappointed in that, especially given how the entire climax played out. It was pretty gory. It was very violent. And so I wanted her to actually take the leap and do the thing in certain situations, and she just didn't. I don't know, basically the finale just felt like a little too easy, too happy almost. I almost wish she would have included in some emotional punches that I think would have made the end of this that much more memorable, especially by comparison to like the last two books I've read. I just was expecting something darker. And then again, this doesn't really officially wrap up the plot around that path of the open hand, but I did sort of expect that just with knowing the next book is Path of Vengeance, a sequel to Path of Deceit. But it does close out the plot around Irem and Erno, and I did really like that. I was very satisfied with that end of the war at least. So while I did have a few complaints, overall I did still really enjoy this. I loved getting to see more of these characters. Still a solid 4 stars. I think honestly, after reading this one and realizing this is a 4 stars, I kind of want to go back and bump Convergence up to a 4.5. I really enjoyed that one so much. I mean, I still am thinking about certain interactions between the characters in that book. All right, y'all, and on that note, that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me some sort of a star emoji in the comments. While you're down there, I have all my socials linked in the description if you're interested in keeping up with what I am reading. I also have a few ways you can support me. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!